In this video, we are going to look at Boris Johnson's final speech as PM. And we're going to look at what he says in it, and how it's similar to things he said in the past. So, let's play a bit of his speech.
Down to lows not seen since I was about 10 years old and bouncing around on a space hopper, my friend. And on the subject of bouncing around in future careers, let me say that I am now like one of those booster rockets that has fulfilled its function, and I will now be gently re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down invisibly in some remote and obscure corner of the Pacific. And like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough.
Now, he refers to himself as a booster rocket, returning and making a splash in the ocean. I've shown in my videos over the last 2 years how it looks like there's going to be some kind of tsunami event caused by an asteroid impact, but it will be man-made, because there's tons and tons of predictive programming, and it could also be connected to La Palma, a landslide in La Palma. There might be combined events. So it looks like there might be a meteor storm, and in this meteor storm, the world is going to be hit by, as I see it, these man-made missiles. The Americans have this weapon system called Project Thor, where they have missiles called rods that can imitate meteors. And the creator of that secret project, Project Thor, wrote a book called Lucifer's Hammer, which was about an asteroid impact. And that book, Lucifer's Hammer, inspired Arthur C. Clarke to write a book called The Hammer of God. The god that has a hammer is Thor, and Arthur C. Clarke's book is about fragments of a comet hitting the Earth. And Arthur C. Clarke's book, Hammer of God, influenced the film Deep Impact. Now, I believe this is going to be a man-made event. You can see it on the cover of The Economist magazine Next Catastrophe and many other Economist magazine covers. A magazine that is owned by the Red Shield family. And here we have Boris Johnson again indicating at that event, and I've shown in my previous videos how he wrote an article in 2004 talking about an asteroid impact and the collapse of La Palma, and how this would cause a tsunami, a mega tsunami, and how Noah had warned in the past about the flood, was warned by God about the flood. And what they're doing is that they are actually going to recreate these events. And then Boris Johnson talks about Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus was a Roman dictator in the 5th century BC who became dictator to put down an invasion, and then he decided to give up the dictatorship and go back to gardening. But then he was called again, and he came back to put down a revolt of the people. Now, what Boris Johnson is saying here is that he's going to come back. And what I will suggest in this video is that Boris Johnson might still be Prime Minister. Liz Truss may not have been sworn in properly due to a technicality in the law, which I'll explain in a minute. And remember that Churchill came back, and Churchill took over during World War II. And there's lots of similarities between Churchill and Boris Johnson. Churchill was the first Prime Minister under Queen Elizabeth II, and Boris is the 14th. That's 7-7. Boris is the 77th Prime Minister. Boris resigned on 7-7. So there's lots of 7-7 coding. It seems like Boris Johnson has the 7-7 coding and Trump has the 8-8 coding. Now we're going to look at a previous video of Boris, and he says the next catastrophe will be a cosmic spanner, hurtling towards us at night.
And back to where we were. And it's clear from COVID that we need the economic robustness to deal with whatever the next cosmic spanner may be hurtling towards us in the dark. And the only way to ensure true resilience and long-term prosperity is to...
So he says the next problem will be a cosmic spanner. That sounds like a meteor impact, or an asteroid impact, but I believe it will be man-made, and it will cause a tsunami. And so we go on to Boris, and here he talks about how they've built a firm foundation. The foundations are built on masonry, free masonry.
To beat COVID, to put us where we are today. Together, we have laid foundations that will stand the test of time, whether by taking back control of our laws or putting in vital new infrastructure. Great, solid masonry on which we will continue to build together.
Now notice that the theme Build Back Better is building. That's Freemasonry again. And the B's in lowercase is 666, okay? Now Liz Truss, she wore the purple of the Queen, the crown. She wore the purple of the crown, and her name means truss is an architectural support for a roof. So then again, she's holding the roof up. It's an architectural support. So again, it's a reference to Freemasonry. That she is there on a temporary basis holding the roof up for Boris Johnson. And what could be the case is that Boris Johnson is still Prime Minister. And I will tell you why Boris Johnson is still Prime Minister, because according to this profile on Twitter, the Prime Minister of the UK cannot be sworn in Scotland. It has to be done in England. And the Queen is in Scotland and she can't move. And it looks like the Queen's going to die very soon. And I say all these events are connected to the Crown and the Queen's death. And the Queen represents the Masonic crown, the Crown of Solomon. And she also represents, the crown is symbolic of the Keter, the highest level of the Kabbalah. So it looks like the Queen's going to die very soon. Liz Truss was wearing the purple of the crown. And according to this profile on Twitter, that Boris is still PM because it's against the law, the constitution, that UK constitution, that the monarch swears you in Scotland. It has to be done in England. So it could be that Boris is still the Prime Minister, and what we're witnessing is a sleight of hand, and Boris will come back when this event happens, because it looks like there's going to be a series of events and Boris is actually going to come back. And we can see here that the Queen postpones the Privy Council meeting. So it looks like the Queen's going to die. She had a black hand. That shows you that her circulation is bad. And it looks like the Queen is going to be announced dead. And it could be that Boris Johnson is still Prime Minister due to a constitutional loophole. And that he will be back. And that Boris Johnson is the last Prime Minister under Queen Elizabeth II. So those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.